Hello and welcome to this episode of the Take Your Shot podcast. You guys, today I have an amazing guest. Her name is Mycah Bain, and Mycah is someone who has been doing wedding photography for a long time, and now she's transitioned into doing more business coaching, empowerment, and all the things. She has an incredible lifestyle that she lives. She is one of the most empowered women that I know, whether it's with managing her finances and working an incredible schedule. She travels all over the world, and she is someone you will want to learn from. And so I'm very excited to have her on the show today. Mycah, hello. Do you want to say hello to everyone?
Hey, Hallie. Thank you. I'm blushing. This is so fun. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you. So Mycah, for people who don't know you, like what would you like to share about yourself in terms of like who you are and what you're passionate about?
Yes. So, like Hallie mentioned, I've been a photographer for 13 years now. So, I'm pretty committed. I really love it. And I love what I do. I love my clients. But then outside of work, I really love to travel the world, spend time in my home, spend time with friends and family, and just like invite other people to create the life of their dreams because it's pretty amazing.
Seriously, it's so cool. And I've been really inspired by just like watching you since I've met you and just seeing all the cool things you do. Like literally you went to what were you in Europe for like an entire month in the middle of what's like the busiest season for photographers?
Yeah.
That's so wild. Like I would love to hear more about like what empowered you to do that and like how did you build this business of your dreams?
So I feel like stepping back a little bit, back in 2018, I was like pretty burnt out across the board. So I made the decision that year to take January through March just completely off. And as like a wedding photographer in Minneapolis, like there's not a lot of weddings typically going on there then anyway. So I just made like a very clear decision that I was going to like do absolutely no work during those 3 months. And that was like, I'd never done anything like that before, but I just felt like it was super necessary for just like me as a person and my mental health and just to do like a reset. So coming back into work that year, I was like way more like motivated and excited. And that was the beginning of where I really started setting up different systems from a CRM like Dubsado or things like that to like have my business be more working for me instead of kind of feeling like I was like nonstop working for my business, I guess. So yeah, since then I've been very intentional to take 1 to 3 months off of work every single year, which I know like some people are like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But it's like maybe, but also I think if you plan for it, like it is doable depending, like you could do your own version of that depending on your industry and where you live and what are like your wants and needs in your life and business. So yeah, that was kind of like the start of it.
That's so cool. And I feel like, I mean, there are companies out there who offer sabbaticals. And I think what's interesting is like when you work for yourself, it's so easy to get sucked into like feeling like you always have to manage everything all the time. But really, like healthy workplaces give you times off.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to think through like, okay, if you want to have an amazing business and you want to like work for someone amazing, be that amazing person to work for when you're working for yourself, you know? Like, could you
Mm-hmm.
imagine having a boss that's like, hey, why don't you just take next month off? I know it's been a busy season. Like, you should do that. Like, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I love this job. I will do this forever. Like, treating yourself almost like an employee. And like, man, I want to be the best boss to myself.
Totally.
I
Yeah.
think
And
that's
I
so
just
good.
feel like every time I take time off, like even if it's like this past weekend, I was up north with a group of girlfriends and like we were there like working for the first day and a half and then like playing for like the second day and a half. And I just came back like this Monday morning, just like so amped and excited and ready to get back in because I spent time like away, playing, being social, just having fun, like doing things that I know that I love and like fuel me. So I don't know, it does not necessarily need to be something huge and dramatic. Like I think even just making sure you like finish work at the end of the day and don't like work till you fall asleep or like take your weekends off. Things like that have just been like completely like life changing and life giving to me.
I love it. I love it. For someone who is maybe thinking through, man, like I don't know that I have time to do that. What would you say to that person? Like, what are some of the warning signs or things that maybe tell you, yeah, you know, I should be really looking into doing something like this because it'll probably actually serve me? Like, what are some of those like things that you'd recommend? Like, hey, you probably need this.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably everyone needs it to be honest. Like no I don't well, like we're just not meant to be working like 24/7 and I know that like if you're, you know, like both of us I know like really love what we do and are like we can't believe like this is our job and we get to do it. Yes, and that doesn't mean that can be like the only thing that you like and enjoy in your life. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's like being intentional about like working when you're working and then taking a break when you're taking a break because no one can like be that efficient working like 12 hours straight, like every day. That's just not possible. So, and not necessary. So I think like, first of all, I think it's necessary for everyone. But second of all, I think just starting with small steps and slowly implementing different systems in the back end of your business. For example, we already talked about like using a CRM, like that has just completely streamlined like the amount of time that I spend on like emails, workflows, things like that. Like if you're writing the same email more than once, save it as a template, customize it, good to go. That's going to save you 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 10 minutes there. Like every little bit of time that you can save is like, even if you have 1 more hour each week, that is huge. And that's just kind of like the snowball effect of realizing like, okay, what is possible? How can I like continue on this journey? So yeah, I think just really paying attention to like taking those steps and not thinking like I have to take 3 months off or nothing at all. Like, I don't know, try to get like 5 minutes back in your day, 10 minutes back, like 1 hour back. Like it's very possible to start with those baby steps.
I love that. And I think putting systems in place can definitely make an impact. And I think what you were saying was so good in terms of like, yeah, even if it's just like 5 minutes here and there, time is the one currency. I actually like recently just talking about this before, but it's like time is the one currency you can never get back. So it's spent, it's spent. And
Right.
so I don't care if I'm only saving 5 minutes here and there. I'm going to try to look for all the 5 minutes in my day because that adds up to hours, adds up to days, adds up to, I mean, I don't know how many
Well, and that's your
things you have to
life.
change for
Like,
years, but
this is like how we're spending our life. So yeah, like I don't know. So I think there's a lot of ways to do it. And I'm very big into habits and systems. And if you're familiar with the book, like Atomic Habits, like that, I highly recommend for anyone really. But just kind of like paying attention to like, what are these like small shifts that you can start making over time, I think is just like very powerful. And yeah, really just gives you time back. Or like, I don't know, even batch working where you like, maybe plan out your entire month's worth of social media like in one day, and then you're not every day like, oh my gosh, I have to think of something to post. Or like I do that with editing, like I'll like call like 5 sessions all at once, and then I'll like edit them the first, like I don't know, different things, just figuring out like what feels good and what feels good to you, and figuring out like what makes sense, I think is super powerful. So I don't know, like one practice that I do is, and like I would recommend to anyone listening that's like not going to take you that long, where you literally just like jot down everything you do in your business from the big to small things, and then next to it like label it as either life giving, like that's the stuff that like lights you up, you love it, like this is why you do it. Life draining, where you're like, oh my gosh, like every time I have to do that, I hate it, I reschedule, I postpone. Or if it's just kind of neutral, you're like, you're not obsessed, but you don't hate it either. And then just like pay attention to those things. So the things that are life giving, like make sure you have time to be doing those things. And the stuff that is life draining, like I think you should either consider, can you eliminate it? Can you outsource it? Or can you automate it? Because if you can't do one of those things, like I just don't think you should be doing it yourself. Like if there are things that like you literally hate every time, don't. Like, I don't know.
totally. And you're someone who lives this out really well. Do you mind talking a little bit about some of your systems? I also know you have a team, and how you delegate some of those tasks, and what does it look like setting that up? Like how did you find the right people? How did you put together the right systems? How did you make it work for you?
Yeah. So I think, again, this can be like baby steps over time. So don't feel like you need to like do everything all at once. But again, with like automating and systematizing everything is the first step. So like we already talked about, that can be emails, that can be, like editing. Now I all of a sudden forgot anything else that we do in business, but like, yeah, social media marketing, like even, yeah, like meetings, calls, anything like that. Either like automate it or outsource it. Some things that I've done, like my very first hire a few years ago was I hired someone part-time to do social media. I was just like in like a midst of like a personal crisis, and I was like, I cannot handle social media right now. Like I just know that I don't want to like disappear from the world, but I also know that if I am on Instagram, like it's going to be so bad for my mental health. And that is like always one of my top priorities, because I think if you make sure you take care of yourself and like show up as your best self, then you're going to show up best for your clients and serve them better. So yeah, I just like called someone literally crying and was like, help me, like I need to do that, like I need help with this, like can you just to post some random things? I have no strategy. Not probably the best way to make a first hire, but like she took it. I was able to take care of myself and take the time that I needed to just like focus on my own healing and get to a good spot. And that also like created me the time and the space to create that trust muscle with myself where I'm like, okay, did she probably post some things that I wouldn't have posted? Sure, but guess what? Nobody died. Like we're not saving lives here. Sorry. Like it's kind of not that serious sometimes. Like it's worth like taking a risk and trying something new. And if you don't like how something turned out, like make a shift and do it differently next time. So that was my first thing. And then I eventually like hired a part-time assistant who helped me organize and automate my emails and also was able to point out some things where she's like, this doesn't really make sense. What if we try this? And I'm like, yes, amazing. So since then I have made shifts, hired different people, and now I have a full-time assistant who like takes care of a million things. And that has just been like so amazing because now I am able to spend my time and my energy on the things that I am the best at, the things that I'm like most energized doing. So now it's not like I never do stuff that's like on my like do not like or life draining list, but almost every time I hit something on my to-do list and I'm like, I really, really don't want to do this, then I like go back to my same question where I'm like, can I eliminate this? Like, is this even necessary? Can I automate this or can I outsource this? And I mean, again, it's like obviously there are going to be things in business and life that you do that you don't want to do. But I think the more that we can like move those to the side, I think the more energized, creative you can be, like not only in like the creative work that you're doing for your clients, but how you're showing up for your clients, but then also just like how you're showing up in your life and like being a person and a friend and a partner and like a family member, whatever it is. Yeah, that's just been like very it's just been so fun for me like to make these small shifts and be like, oh my gosh, it's working. Like even right now, this is like, the end of busy season, and past years at this time I feel like I've been just like holding on for dear life and been like, oh my gosh, like get me to my time off, like, and now I'm like, I don't know, I feel pretty good. Like, yeah, I don't know, I don't feel like I'm showing up at this time of the year just like totally dead and drained, which is exciting.
That is exciting, especially with just like how much you've grown over the last like year and a half, and
Mhm.
then on. And so it's been really cool to just see you being in such a great place. And I think you're totally right. Like it is good to like delegate, get rid of like the tasks that you can, because I think as business owners, we need to be working on the business, not in it. And if you're
Mhm.
doing something that can be like automated or outsourced, and get that off your plate, think about like how much that will empower you to either scale your business or be more present in your personal life, or
Yes.
hopefully both. Like both of those
Yeah.
things are very important. So I love
Yeah.
it. You really hit that there.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sure there are people listening who might be a little overwhelmed. Maybe they're like earlier on in their business, maybe they don't have the budget to outsource, or maybe they haven't put together a CRM, and I know that takes a lot of time.
Mhm. Mhm.
What would you say, where would you say they should start? Like whether it's like their habits and their routine or just like mindset, like where would you say someone should start in terms of like starting to make these shifts in their business if they're not quite ready to take a big one of like hiring someone or putting together a
Yeah.
full system?
Yeah. Yeah, so totally. And I think all of that is completely valid. I mean, I like the practice of, like I was saying, like the life giving neutral or life draining as far as like the tasks you do, but then also pay attention to like when do you work and like when do you feel the most creative, the most energized? Do you like to bounce around from task to task? Do you like to work alone at your home? Do you like to go to a coffee shop? Do you like to go to a co-working space? Like, do you like it to be loud? Like, I don't know, just pay attention to all these details. Like, are you a morning person, a night person? Do you want to work 5 days a week? Do you want to work less? I mean, more is probably not preferable. Like I would extremely recommend taking minimum of 1 day off per week. Like a full weekend is very reasonable, like 2 days. Um, but then also paying attention to like how you're spending your time. So even for the next couple of days, just like write down like how you're like what you're doing every, like you can break it down however much you want, but like every 15 minutes, like what are you like doing, whether it's like personal or work, so you can like maybe start to figure out like, okay, in my mind I'm working 9 to 5, but like in reality I took like a 1 hour break for this, and then I scrolled on TikTok for half an hour here, and then I like was on the phone for a half an hour here, and then I did it out like, okay, so maybe you only worked 4 hours. Okay, well then maybe like don't kind of like trick yourself to thinking you worked all day when you literally worked for 4 hours. So can you like, does that work well for you? Do you like to work for an hour, then be on TikTok for half an hour, then work for an hour, then like take an hour lunch break? Like if that's what you like and you feel like you're getting done what you want to get done, great. Or if you're like, okay, I can actually I'm only trying to get 4 hours of work done in a day, then just get it done in 4 hours. Like, don't drag it on for 8. You know what I mean? Like, it just, I'm talking to myself too. Like, I literally deleted Instagram off my phone yesterday because I just kept picking up my phone and checking because I was finishing a project that I was like just kind of dragging my feet on. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, this is going to take me 1 hour to finish. Delete Instagram, phone in the other room. Like, I don't know. Just kind of like tricking yourself into different things. I don't know. I think if we're honest with ourselves, so many of us are just like wasting so much time. So I think like probably eliminate the time wasters, or like, yeah, just pay attention to like what you actually want to be doing in your days and in your life. Like whatever is important to you. So I don't know. I feel like it just matters. Like, what are your values? What are your priorities? And what makes you feel good and energized is super, super important. So like for me, there are I have kind of like a list of, I don't know, a handful of things that like I don't do every single one of them every single day, but like they're kind of part of my like overall like self-care health routine or whatever. So like I know I feel way better if I'm like moving my body, if I'm outside, if I'm seeing people. Like I love to like sauna and cold plunge. Like I like to meditate, I like to read. So it's like I'm not doing every single one of these things every single day, but I also know that I also feel way better if I get dressed. And like it doesn't need to be elaborate, but like it probably takes 5 minutes to like put on like a less slobby outfit. And like for me, I like to wear jewelry or like put on like lip gloss. Like again, this is like a 2-minute effort and I just feel much more like cute and fancy and put together. So then I think that just affects how I show up to my work. So anyway, like those are all just like my random dump of like some ideas that work for me. Like these are definitely not for everyone, but just pay attention to like how do you feel and like what matters to you, and then just like start putting those things into place.
I love that. And I think that's so important because feeling good in your business and not draining yourself and being efficient and doing like a real heart check of like, okay, am I actually showing up the most effective way in my business? Like, am I taking too many breaks? Do I need to take it off my phone? Like, social media can be a huge time suck. If anyone's saying that they've never struggled with that, then I don't believe you,
I
especially
agree.
in the creative
Yeah.
space where like it's literally your job to bring in clients and all of that through getting found on social
Yes.
media. Like that is like a huge part of like, especially photographers getting found. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, I always try to keep a check in my mind of like, am I creating or am I consuming? And I try to make sure that I'm
Smart.
like on there to create and connect. And if I'm only consuming, then time to get off. I am really curious though. I am really curious how do you hold yourself accountable? Because I think that's one of the biggest things that photographers and business owners struggle with is because they're just kind of on this on their own. So how do you like hold yourself accountable? How do you make sure that you stick to what you want to do? Any tips for that?
Yes. I think this kind of goes back to knowing yourself. Like I will be straightforward that I'm just like a very motivated, disciplined person naturally. And also I think like inviting other people in on that, and like inviting like a community of people to be like, hey, I'm gonna, like Hallie and I've even done this where we're like, okay, I'm getting this project done by the end of the week. Like even sometimes just saying it out loud to someone, and then when it's the end of the week, like, did you get it done? Something like that. Or even I think going back to what we were talking about, just making like really tiny small shifts and not trying to make this like, okay, I'm gonna implement like a 1 hour morning routine and like a 2 hour, well, like I don't know, it doesn't need to be that complicated. Like one of my favorite practices and habits that I have is every morning I go out on my front lawn, the sun comes in, I stand barefoot on the grass and I take like 3 deep breaths and I start my day with just like a prayer meditation out there. Like there's been a bunch of construction going on my street recently, and I'm sure the construction workers are like, who is this crazy lady who's just like out there barefoot, like in her pajamas? But I'm like, until the snow comes, like I'm gonna be doing this every day. And then even once the snow comes, I think I'll just go out there in my boots. And it just feels good because I'm like seeing the sun, getting fresh air, starting my moment, like feeling grounded, like a moment of prayer, moment of meditation. Like that literally takes me 2 minutes. So like, I don't know, tiny little things like that have been super helpful. And then also kind of going back to, again, just paying attention to how you feel and what works for you. Like I know that if I like skip lunch, I'm like not gonna feel good and I'm gonna start to get kind of like crabby and headachy. Like, okay, then just like eat lunch. I don't know, we gotta eat, you know. Some of the stuff is just like so obvious, like how am I even saying this out loud, but I have to like remind myself, okay, take a break to eat lunch, you will feel better.
Totally. And I feel like even just like meals in general can be so complicated, and so I try to, like, have I kinda wish I could just outsource my meals and just have it, like, fully here, and you can, there actually are
Yeah.
services for that, but I try to keep it simple and just like, "Okay, I made this in bulk, I've got leftovers, I've got easy things just to heat and grab and go." I love to make myself, like, little, like, work charcuteries. Like, I'll
Cute.
have,
I
like, a
love
little
that.
charcuterie board when I'm, like, editing or something just to, like, have
Yeah.
snacks, but
Yeah.
yeah, no, I think everything you just shared was so good, and there's so many practical tips that people can like take from this episode and dive into. And so for those of you listening, like, so glad that you're here, and I really hope that this empowers you and inspires you in your business. Mycah, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you?
Yes, thank you. You can come join me on Instagram at Mycah Bain Photo, Mycah. And I also have a really fun freebie for all of you, and like a workbook talking about how you can unlock your ideal workday. So it's the stuff that we just talked about. So it's if you just go to mycahbain.com/unlock, and then that will give you like a practical, like step by step, like writing through like what do you want your days to look like, what do you want your weeks to look like, what is life giving, what is life draining, just to kind of like get you going in like a new direction, and making those like small pivots and not feeling like you have to like overhaul your entire life. Like just start with one step.
I love it. Thank you so much for your time, and for everyone listening, go check out the show notes. I'll have everything linked below, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.